Ciao, kumusta? My name is Victor, and in today's video, we're going to talk about how I set up my A7IV with its custom settings, with its menu, and how I get it to be as efficient as it is as a video camera. We all know how the Sony menu system is so convoluted. I mean, for us longtime Sony users, we're used to this, but I mean, whenever you're out shooting, you really don't want to sift through the settings and try to find the things that you want. You want this camera to be as efficient as you can, and that all the custom buttons, all the cinematic functions will be readily available to you for you to change whenever you're out shooting. So I'm going to put everything down below in the description, timestamps and the settings that I put and I changed, so that in case you missed anything in this video, it's there for you and you can replay it as well. So let's get into these settings. Let's go into image quality, file format, and that we're gonna click into this. I use the HS 4K because I edit on a MacBook Pro, and with M1 machines it has a media accelerator for H.265 decoders, so it's easier for me to edit. So it's a compressed video format, and it's also a lower file size compared to the others. And if you don't have these H.265 accelerators on your machine, you're gonna have a hard time editing these because your computer has to decode everything and then encode it again, and it's just very taxing on your computer. So if you don't have media accelerators on your laptop, on your editing machine, I would suggest shooting with the S-I format. So this is the most uncompressed video format on this A7IV, and that we can utilize that. The only downside of this is that it's bigger on file sizes, but it's easier to edit, and this is what I would choose if I don't have media accelerators. So since I can shoot and edit with the XAVC HS 4K, it's a mouthful, I know. I'm gonna use that, and let's move on to movie settings. So I usually shoot 24p, so we're gonna leave it at that. If you want 60 frames per second is also there. And for the record settings, I'm gonna give it to the 100 megabits per second 422 10-bit. It's gonna give you the best quality footage on your A7IV. Next up is S&Q Settings. I put this on the record frame rate of 24 because I want to match it with the frame rate that I shoot the most. I usually use S&Q only for time lapses, so I'm gonna give it to 1, and again 100 megabits per second 422 10-bit, so that we get that highest quality out of this camera. Okay, so then let's go back. Proxy settings, I don't usually record proxies with the A7IV because my machine can handle all the footage. Okay, so APS-C S35 crop shooting, usually it's set to auto, but we're gonna turn it off so that we can manually pick if we want to shoot in crop mode or in full frame mode. Next one is lens compensation. This lens that I have attached on here doesn't have it, but we're gonna just leave it auto, and then breathing compensation on. Now, the most important part and what I shoot in is the flexible exposure mode. With the flexible exposure mode turned on, you can set each setting, for example, your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, your exposure triangle. You can set these in auto as quick as you can with a custom button. Now I'll explain later, but let's move on to the next setting. Audio recording, obviously we're gonna put it to on, and then wind noise reduction off because that's terrible on in camera. And then audio display level, obviously we want it on so that we can see the levels coming into the camera. Time code, this is extremely a long topic, so it might be on a separate video. We're gonna talk about it next time. And we're gonna move on to image stabilization, steady mode, steady shot. Usually I use active, but again, we have a shortcut for this later, so we're gonna switch that. Zoom, we're gonna skip. Shooting display, I usually have my rule of thirds grid on, so we have a guideline of what we're shooting on the A7IV. Next up is, I think this is the most important part as well, is the emphasized recording display. If we have it off and we start recording, it doesn't have the red bar, the red box around the screen. And with it on, and we shoot it, now we have that. And this is great because the A7IV doesn't have tally lights, and sometimes we accidentally think that we're recording, but actually we're stopping. And if you've had that issue before, it's a nightmare and you don't want it to happen to you. So in order for you to confirm that you're actually shooting and that you're recording, that emphasized recording display is now helpful to you whenever you're shooting, so you don't miss a shot, you don't miss a recording. Okay, next one is marker display. I have it off now, but we have this on custom button later. And I put 4:3 aspect ratio. Again, we're going to explain it later. ISO, I always leave it at 800 or 3200 depending on the situation, but the base ISO is 800 for S-Log3, so I just leave it at that so that I get the most dynamic range out of this camera. Exposure compensation and exposure step, I put it on 0.3. These are just default, so I don't really use that at all. Metering mode, we're going to go through multi and face priority in multi-metering. Of course, yes, because we always want to expose the face as the subject, as the main focal point, because if we have the skin tones overexposed, then the video is ruined. And if you're in a run and gun situation, shockless white balance, we're going to set it to 3. If you have your white balance on auto and that you're on a tight event and that you need all auto white balance, this will stop it from changing super fast, and it's like super gradual. And it won't be like, oh, cool temperature, warm temperature, cool temperature, warm temperature. This will just be like, ooh, very smooth gradient. Next one is the color tone, de-optimizer off. Picture profile obviously is S-Log3 PP8, and I didn't change anything. This is all the default settings, so we're not gonna dive in deep to that. Soft skin effect, obviously off because it's terrible. And zebra display, I have it on a custom button, and I have it on custom. So custom is 75 plus and minus 5. When I'm using zebras, I use it for skin tones, and that usually the exposure range for skin tones are around 70, 75. So I have it on tolerance with that. Sometimes I like it to be at 73 so that it's closer to what I would like it to be, but 75 is kind of my limit. If the zebras show up on the skin tones at that level, then I will slowly just bring it down a little bit so that we expose the skin tones very well. Autofocus, manual focus, and this is going to be continuous autofocus. And with lenses that has the tab autofocus, manual focus, you can easily switch whenever you need to. Okay, transition speed is 3. We want it to be cinematic so that whenever it's autofocus, changing focus points, it's the perfect speed for a rack focus, an auto rack focus. I left it to that. And then subject shift sensitivity, I left it at 4 because I thought 3 is a little bit slow, especially for gimbal shots, and I'm changing subjects. I like it to follow what the camera is looking at and deeming it what the subject is, and it helps a lot. Focus area, usually I have it on zone or center, depending on what I need it to be. Focus area color is red so that I know it's separated from the other info on the screen. Face or eye priority in autofocus, obviously it's on. And then human, subject select, I have all on. And then left and right eye select, I have it on auto. Then face eye display is on so that you can tell who it's focusing on, especially if you have 2 subjects. And if you have a very wide aperture of 1.4, then you would know who it's focusing on. Okay, so now peaking display, I have it on mid, and peaking color yellow because we have the focus points as red. We have white as the other info on the screen. The peaking color yellow so that you can easily see what you're focusing in, especially in the small screen of this Sony. So now we're gonna get into the nitty gritty of this video, and that's setting the custom buttons of this A7 IV, and feel free to just copy this. Again, this is my settings and that it helps me be efficient on the field. So let's go to this, and first things first, this AEL button, it has this little checkered screen, so I switched it to Gamma Display Assist. So if you're shooting in S-Log, and just take a look at this. If you're shooting at S-Log and you don't have a monitor attached, this is very helpful so that you can kind of see what the final image would look like. And if you can just toggle that on and off, in a faster basis, then like it will help you in your shoots a lot. Okay, next one is focus magnifier on this AF on. It has this magnifying plus tool, and it just helps with the focus whenever you're trying to focus on something, right? And that it, especially on manual focus. Number 3 is the custom button number 1, and this is the ISO, auto and manual setting. So if ever I need to have the ISO or the aperture on auto mode, this is where the flexible exposure program or setting is. It'll automatically find the best aperture and the ISO for your setting. Again, this is for run and gun. Okay, so the custom button 3 on the left side is our toggle for crop mode, APS-C mode, or full frame mode. What this does is that if you do need extra reach, you can easily just zoom in and out, especially if you have a prime lens, or if you're on your top range of your zoom lens and you need more reach, this is how you would get it. The number 5 is we're actually gonna change this to zebra display, and that it's because it has trash can and then it has the stripes, so it helps me a lot with remembering all the tools that I need. Okay, so the trash can, the custom button 4 will be your zebras, and that it'll show up whenever I'm trying to really expose the skin tones. And next one is your rear number 2. This analog stick right here, if you press it, it kind of reminds me of the sound waves because it's prickly. On here, if I'm using a microphone, then I'll bring it down. And it's just easily accessible for me to change the audio levels. Number 2 is steady shot, which is this center button, and that if I want stable shots, then I can just click it instantaneously. The left button on this wheel is white balance, so I can easily access white balance, change the white balance whenever I need to. And then number 4, the right button is your marker display set. So now we have the rule of thirds on, and then if I do want to shoot vertical footage or for Instagram, this will be my guide and it'll just change it. So if you turn your camera like this will be your 4:3 Instagram portrait post, and then outside of that is your 16:9. Number 5, which is the down button, is the peaking display. Peaking display will try and help you find your focus on this small screen, and really helps a lot, especially if you're using a manual lens. Okay, we'll move on to the top. Obviously, number 1 is your movie shooting. This is the red button on top. And then custom button 2 is the aperture auto mode. And it's quickly, and if I'm in a run and gun situation, or if I'm vlogging, this is what I would do. And I would leave the ISO on 800 and then the shutter speed at just to double the shutter speed of your frame rate. You might not have this depending on your lens. If you have a custom button on your lens like the G Master lenses, put this on focus selector hold so that it doesn't follow. Like if I wanted to just hold the settings, it will do that for me. Okay, so let's go through the dial wheels, and that number 1 is my aperture, which is the front dial. Second one is an ISO. Third one is your shutter, and this is actually off. We're gonna say not set, because this wheel right here, you will always hit it. So we don't want to be shooting and accidentally changing your shutter speed or whatever you have this set on. So since I barely changed the shutter speed, I set this to the shutter speed like this one with a lock on, because like now I can change my shutter speed, right? If I wanted to change it to 125, then go back to 50. And with this on, I don't have to worry about my shutter speed changing unless I unlock it with this little dial lock. Okay, now function settings, feel free to copy everything here. Let me just explain why. I put everything on the left that I changed a lot, which is 24p. Instead of going through the file image and just looking for it, all I can do now is that hit the function button, change it to 60 frames per second or 24 frames. And then if I do want to change the recording format, then it's all here. And then the bits again, if I don't need to shoot 10-bit, then it's all there. And then peaking level, again, if I want to change it, it's handy on the function menu. And the zebra levels are here too, just in case I want to change the settings. Focus area is something that I change a lot as well. So it's either wide, zone, or center. Center fix is usually what I use for gimbals, but depending on the shoot, I usually just leave it on zone. Focus mode, if you don't have that AF/MF toggle on your lens, then this is very helpful. You can just change it whenever you need to. Picture profile, just in case you don't want to shoot S-Log, but there are some times that I don't need to shoot S-Log and just shoot Cinetone. This is where I would change it. Multi-metering mode, sometimes I do want to expose for the highlights only, so it's either multi or highlights. But usually for S-Log 3 overall footage, I want it to be around, usually just set it on 0.7 because the noise floor on the S-Log 3 on the new Sony cameras, the A7S3, the FX3, and the A7IV, the noise floor is very good on these, so we don't need to overexpose anymore on the S-Log, okay? And then we're gonna bring it back to all fully manual. And then focus map, again, sometimes I use this, sometimes I don't. It's just a handy dandy tool just in case peaking is really not being helpful at that time. And then record media settings. And if I want to record at a specific slot, then this is where I would go. My menu, I only have 2 for these because everything that I need to change on the spot, on the fly, is customized to the buttons. And with this, all I need, if I do need to format the card, then I just go to the menu and it's there. I don't need to find it to the last page. So I put the select finder monitor on auto right now because I wanted to demonstrate to you guys that sometimes if we're shooting video, we don't usually use the viewfinder and that it does this. It just gets the screen blank. And it's very annoying, and if you've shot with the A7 III or the older Sony cameras, this was always an annoying feature. But I mean, it works if you're a hybrid shooter, but that's why I have it on my menu so that I can easily set it to just monitor so we don't have to deal with the automatic switching between the two. And that is my A7 IV filmmaking setup, and so far it's the most efficient that I've gotten this camera to be. All the buttons that we need is at our fingertips, and that we don't need to sift through the settings while we're shooting. Hopefully you try it out and see for yourself if it fits your workflow. Feel free to tweak it as best as you can for your workflow, and hopefully that will give you the camera, the video camera efficiency that you want. And don't forget, I'm giving away free LUTs every single week, my S-Log 3 film conversion LUT. All you have to do is comment down below if these settings help you out or if you changed anything with these settings. I'd love to know. Anyways, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.
너와 나